It's Rocky Mountain Sasquatch. With the 100-year anniversary of the famous 1924 Albert Ostman Bigfoot abduction incident this year, I would like to celebrate by giving you Albert's report, and I would like to start out by going over a similar report in the same region of British Columbia from a native man that was abducted in nearly the same way and held captive by a tribe of Sasquatch 4 years after Ostman's terrifying encounter. Albert Ostman's abduction happened near the Tlupana Inlet, and around 90 miles away, Muchalat Harry was abducted near the Tlupana Inlet. Watch to the end so you can see Albert Ostman's Bigfoot abduction experience, and please make sure to subscribe and hit that bell button to get notifications of the 3 new Bigfoot videos that we post each week with sighting reports, Sasquatch evidence videos, photos, and investigations into Bigfoot sighting hotspots. Here is Muchalat Harry's encounter, written by the late Peter C. Byrne, born August 22, 1925, and he passed away July 28, 2023. He lived to the ripe age of 97. He dedicated his life in the pursuit of cryptozoology subjects. He was able to coordinate sponsorships for expeditions to search for the Yeti and the North American Sasquatch for almost 60 years. Peter Byrne's book, The Search for Bigfoot, 1975, he interviewed a missionary named Father Anthony Tahar that lived with the Nootka tribe for some time on Vancouver Island. He became very good friends with a tribesman named Muchalat Harry. Muchalat claimed he had been carried off by some Sasquatch and held captive by them for some time. The Nootka tribe seemed to regard the deep forest as the territory and home of Bigfoot. Muchalat Harry, according to Father Anthony, was a tough, fearless man in excellent condition. He was different from the other tribesmen. He would trap in the forest alone for many weeks, something the average Indian did not do in those days. In the late fall of 1928, Muchalat Harry set off into the deep woods with his camping gear and traps. He planned to set a trap line and stay in the forest for a few months. He went to his favorite hunting area at the head of the Tlupana Inlet. From Nootka, he paddled his canoe to the mouth of the Conuma River. He stashed his canoe and headed upstream on foot. Around a dozen miles or so upstream, he set up base camp, then built a lean-to and started his trap line. One of the nights, Muchalat was wrapped up in his blankets wearing his undergarments when he was quickly picked up by a large male Bigfoot and carried off into the forest. He estimates the creature carried him 2 to 3 miles. When morning came, he was able to make out what he saw was a crude camp under a rock shelf, and he was surrounded by several Sasquatch of different sizes and genders. For a while, they stood around him and observed him. The males closest to him, and then a group of females, stared at him curiously from the back, and behind them were the young ones. Muchalat Harry was terrified because he saw several bones lying around this group's campsite. This convinced him that the Sasquatch were going to eat him. The Bigfoot did not harm or hurt him in any way. Once in a while, one would come up and touch him, as if seeing what he felt like. They were fascinated by his loose-fitting woolen underwear. Many of them pulled at it gently. Muchalat Harry sat against the rock wall and held still while they would examine him with curiosity. Cold and hungry, he pondered how to escape from captivity. Later one afternoon, when the Sasquatch's curiosity seemed to subside, and most of the Bigfoot were out of camp, perhaps gathering is what he assumed, he took the opportunity and ran for his life, never looking back. He ran downhill guessing that was the direction of the river, and soon found his campsite. In complete panic, he ran past the campsite for the next 12 miles, and then to where he stashed his canoe at the mouth of the Conuma River. He arrived at Nootka around 3 in the morning. Father Anthony and the rest of the village were asleep, and the village was quiet. Suddenly there were wild cries from the water's inlet. Many lit lights and headed to the water's edge. Frozen and exhausted in his canoe lay Muchalat Harry. He was barefoot, wearing only his underwear that was torn and wet. He had paddled his canoe 45 miles during the winter night from the Conuma River to the village of Nootka. They carried his nearly lifeless body from the water's edge into the village. It was nearly 3 weeks before Muchalat Harry was feeling healthy and regained his sanity. Father Anthony took care of him and nursed him back to health during that time. Father Anthony stated that Muchalat Harry's hair turned pure white during the course of those 3 weeks. At first, Muchalat Harry would not talk to anyone. Then he told Father Anthony what had happened, then later told the others. Some of the tribesmen asked him when he was planning to go back to collect his belongings on the Conuma. Traps, camp equipment, along with pots and pans were very expensive back then. Plus, a rifle was very expensive and a prized possession for anyone back then. However, Muchalat Harry did not want to go back to collect his things. He'd rather lose all of his valuables that were there and hard to come by than to return to the place he was kidnapped by the Bigfoot tribe. As a matter of fact, he never left the settlement at Nootka, and he never went back into the woods again for the rest of his life. I will leave source links to these stories in the description of this video. I hope you enjoyed. Keep on watching. We're going to keep on squatching. This Canadian province, British Columbia, has a long history of Bigfoot sightings. One of my favorite was the Albert Ostman incident around 100 years ago in 1924. Albert was a gold prospector that was scooped up in his sleeping bag by a large male Sasquatch and carried by the creature for a few hours, then kept by this large creature and his family. The adult female and 2 tall but thinner juveniles. The young ones were a boy and a girl. It seems they were keeping Ostman as a novelty item or a pet. He feared he may in fact become dinner. He escaped after several days of captivity. After going public with his story, Albert faced cross-examination by some of Canada's best interrogators who claimed, even if this did not happen to Ostman, he believes it to be. During examination, he always had a cheerful composure, swore to his story without hesitation, and stuck to it until the end. Albert Ostman was interrogated multiple times without a single change to the details. He was cross-examined by the police and agreed to sign a solemn declaration, which said his account was true under oath and virtue of the Canadian Evidence Act. The beautiful, amazing British Columbia province of Canada. Sunny writes RMSO. I was always skeptical and had some belief in Sasquatch, but once I seen this, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Now there is no changing my mind. They are out there, and more than we ever know. I've seen footprints in these same locations several times. I don't document them because I don't want to draw attention to the area, and location will not be told. However, he did say it was in the province of British Columbia, large province, so it doesn't really narrow it down. Sonny continues, there are multiple here. I just only took pictures of the clearest track. There was a right, left, right coming out of the water, then they disappeared because of the solid ground. I seen 3. The prints were coming out of a very deep hole, at least 7 feet deep, and the first step you can see where its heel slid in the mud. Then the good picture I got is where its left foot got onto the flat ground, and the third print was very faint. It was on solid ground, but you could just make it out. RMSO responds, nice shape. I like how it was in the water. How long and wide is it? Sonny continues, I'm a size 10.5 in wader boots. I didn't get measurements on it. Just took a quick picture and carried on fishing. I want to say 15 inches or more. I don't know exactly. That's still a young one on his way to being a big one. I've seen massive tracks in the same area, probably a young one with its mom or dad for sure. Where I've seen this footprint, I've seen many more in the area. I think a few of them stay in the area all year around. It's a perfect place for them, and it's nearly untouched. I have left apples and little things for them before.